All right. Okay, that's the last chance to bail. Okay, too late now. Well, welcome everybody. Good to see everybody again. It's been over a month since last time. We're getting towards the busy summer season with workshops and meetings and SciPy and all that good stuff happening. So we have an agenda. We probably should stick to that before we digress from it. Megan, you want to sort of take us through where we are with the RC versions and all that stuff?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we released the first release candidate for 6.2.0 on April 19th and received some bug reports, many of which were motivated by PyGMT going through all their tests and changing them for themes. So thank you all for doing that and for informing us of where we went astray. Since RC1, we have also added Federico's animation 14. So that's on the YouTube channel now. As of yesterday, we just put an updated one up there, so you can check it out there. Compared to previous months, there were fewer merged PRs and closed issues, but that was largely related to the fact that there's been a freeze on new features since RC1. And so all the merged PRs are mostly addressing issues. I think with the latest bug fixes that went in there, we're ready to release the next release candidate, and that will presumably be the last release candidate before a full release of 6.2.0. Does anyone have any questions about where we are for the release schedule?
Yeah, so we addressed quite a bit of bug fixes only, and we've started a few future branches that will be merged in master after 6.2.0. And then there are a lot of issues that we want to get to before we forget about them. So we would like to get 6.2 out soon. So that's the goal. It took us a while to actually get RC1 out from when we started. Hopefully it'll speed up a little bit now that we've sort of gone through, got the rust out of the system and streamlined that a little bit better. So hopefully this will be quick. Maybe within a week we can have 6.2 out. Maybe something like that. Great, thanks, Megan. And then we got email from UNAVCO about their signups. They closed the registration for the GMT for Geodesy workshop, and also the GMT SAR and that third one on ICE in-SAR processing. And it looks like we have close to 200 people in all. It's sort of like 70 from UNAVCO affiliated institutions, I think, and another 100 maybe or who are not. And there's at least 20 that took it last year, if I read the table correctly. So last year, I think we had something like 70 to 80 people who participated in a Zoom workshop, and about the same number who just watched it on YouTube. So they couldn't, comment directly, but they could follow along, that kind of stuff. And I think that worked pretty well. I don't think we felt overwhelmed with the numbers. I think people got their questions in, so that seemed like a good threshold of participants, provided we have 4 or 5 instructors who can help with fielding questions. So maybe we can accommodate all the people. Maybe we should say no to the ones who took it last year to not put too much stress on it. I don't. You got any thoughts about the numbers? What we should accomplish?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on how many people we have helping out. So if there's, at any given time, we probably need one instructor and then several people to answer questions. So I would say maybe like, what did we have last time? 10 people for every instructor?
Oh, probably more, I think. More people. I think we had about six instructors, four core instructors and a few student helper type first timers who helped out. Mm-hmm. We'll probably have that this year too, because a lot of these questions are pretty low hanging fruit, easy things for anyone to answer. So I can't remember if I asked everybody if anyone was willing to help this year again with the timing and stuff, but I guess we will have to do that. And then try to bring in a few new people to help who may not be giving presentations, but will be helping with the breakout rooms and questions and all that kind of stuff, and sort of get a hang of what it looks like. So I think we can find people. Megan have to do it. I'll have to do it. So we're quarter way there already, and the rest depends on schedule of people. I know there's a GMT thing going on, so there's a lot of stuff, and we have other workshops in the offing coming afterwards. So it will be busy.
Just for the notes, when is this going to be held again? August?
That's a great question, and I put that in my calendar, but can I find it? That is the question.
It's in July.
Yeah,
July.
It's after Pi, after SciPi, I think. We have the date there.
Not July.
The main dates are July 20th and 21st. Though it does depend on, the dates are different for Paul than for me, or than for the UK it was. So it does depend.
Okay, so it's UTC 2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that sounds about right. Yeah, and I think we set aside like 4 hours or 5 hours, something like that. We followed this recipe from last year, which seemed to work well, breaks and all that stuff, but it's not overwhelming. And we will have, sort of, this worked also pretty well last year. We had like introductory ice-breaking session where we just went over what it's going to be like, so everybody kind of got a sense for what are they going to be doing and how to prepare. And then we had instructions that they all received about how to install and make sure everything is working, run this test, everything should be fine. And then we had a little help session for those who got stuck and couldn't get it to work, where we just worked with them sort of one-on-one. And there weren't that many people who were totally stuck and couldn't get things to run. But that sort of took away all kinds of problems before we started the workshop.
Yeah.
Because back when we did physical workshops, most of the morning was spent with dealing with people's computer issues, right? It's just, they always come late with these things, and then major issue. So that sort of cut down on that. We don't want to do that on a Zoom session, but 100 people waiting, watching us struggle with figuring out why. Because every computer problem is sort of unique to that user. It takes a while to forensically figure out what's going on. So we don't want to spend time on that during the workshop.
So Paul, so have any of you used a platform called GatherTown?
No.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah,
so
I have.
Yeah. So this has been around for a little while. So it's kind of like a video conferencing thing, but you're dropped into this kind of 2D game world, and you have like a little avatar. And when you stand next to people, it connects you through video and audio. But what you can do with that is create like tables, so that people who are sitting around the table, they see each other, but they can see and talk and share screen and all that, but they don't see other groups who are talking also independently. So what that could let us do is if the students are working in groups, we can have them in separate tables, and we can kind of walk around and go around the tables to see if anyone needs help. And to deal with stuff like someone's having this crazy install problem on their computer, it's easy to pull them aside and just say, let's go to this table over here where there's no one, and you can just be like one-on-one with them, sharing the screen and doing the exercise.
Right.
Yeah, so like the SOS table. Yes. Yeah, so we could have like a help table, that could kind of recreate what we did live at Scripps.
Yeah. It's like a genius bar,
Yeah.
Over. So this would sort of replace the breakout room kind of part of things then, and on Zoom.
Yeah. So you can also have like you can build a place where there's a podium. So if anyone stands there, then their video and audio gets broadcast to the entire room. So if you're doing like a lecture type thing, you can just stand on the podium, share your screen, and everyone will see it. Okay. But then when it comes time for them to do stuff on their own, you can step out and they can just talk amongst themselves.
Okay. Can we stream this stuff, or can we record it, or how does that aspect?
So yeah, that's the part that's a little bit more troublesome. So to do that, I think we would need someone like streaming their screen through something like OBS to YouTube. So it's not as easy as with Zoom that you just connect to YouTube and it streams live.
Let's see. Right.
So yeah, the technical side can be a little bit more tricky. And I think if it's more than 25 people, then you have to like buy an event with them. So you pay them some amount of money, and they'll just make it happen.
Right, but UNAVCO probably can do, because we're probably not talking gazillions there. So it's probably something UNAVCO can cover, right?
Yeah, so like a couple $100, I guess.
Yeah, so maybe Melissa at UNAVCO could be the one who's dealing with the streaming or something, and we don't have to worry too much about that. Yeah, it sounds like a great improvement to just the Zoom stuff.
Yeah, it might be worth just doing a trial.
Yeah,
so like setting it up for like we could do like the next community call there and try to figure out how to stream and everything.
But you don't think we could just do it with 200 people the first time, cold turkey? Can I go wrong?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, EGU had the closing party in one of those, and they had like 200 something people on it. So,
all right,
yeah, it kind of works, but I don't know. I feel like for teaching, like I would give it a shot at least.
Yeah. Okay, so I agree with that. It's a good idea to maybe do our next chat, on that, just to get a feel for it, and then we can check with UNAVCO if they have any experience with this at all, or B would be willing to be our partner in this. I'm sure they kind of will. It's not cost. In fact, I think they were saying they would like to pay the instructors this year a little bit. I don't know what that means, because they're usually paying. They cost them quite a bit to put these things on. Usually, they send a representative to San Diego. There's paying for students' airfare, paying for food, the whole 9 yards, right? So now they have like zero expenses, almost. So we should tap into that and at least get them virtual cookies, something.
Leo, I think it sounds really cool, but I'm imagining that the main teacher presenter sometimes steps off the podium and goes over to have a sidebar with somebody who's having a difficulty. And I'm just wondering, the stream that is going out, that is being recorded as the video and going out to YouTube, what happens when the main presenter steps off the podium? You wouldn't want to just have some, blank, dead space streaming.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't know if they have like a built-in streaming functionality, because these spaces can be quite big. So you could have separate rooms even. So what I had thought is if we could have someone with like a separate account or something like that, just, I don't know, focusing on the room and streaming whatever is happening at the room level, so that the private chats between participants wouldn't get broadcast. Only if the instructor is making an announcement, then everyone's going to see that and that gets broadcast. But otherwise, it could just show like the little avatars going around.
It could also be that whoever is sort of leading the little lecture thing up front, where we sort of go through the next step, that person should not be wandering off and helping with someone's computer, right? There are other people who should be doing that. And so we just avoid, that kind of situation to the extent we can. All right, so learning curve. So we got to try it out, I guess, and read a little bit more about it and so on. Yeah, great. That's a good idea. Next, our update on developer workshops for PyGMT. I guess we want to talk about that, Megan?
Sure. So we mentioned this at the last community meeting as an update. We've set a application and an announcement that should be released on the Earth Science Women's Network website, hopefully tomorrow. And the applications will be open until, I think it was June 4th. And then we're hoping to select applicants by July 2nd. And Wei and Paul have volunteered to help me with that workshop. And we really would welcome anyone to be involved with helping run it. We've committed to providing information about the materials and the platforms in early August. The dates of the workshop are August 17th through 19th for 4 hours each day, where 17th is an optional refresher to Git and PyGMT. And so I think the lessons learned from these events in July, including SciPy and the UNAVCA workshop, will be really helpful for us deciding what platforms and technologies we want to use for the August workshop. So it's happening, and we're hopeful that we'll get some good applicants.
Great.
Where's the announcement going to be on?
So it will go out on, I can drop this in the minutes, but it will be on the Earth Science Women's Network website, and I can't remember off the top of my head their URL. And then they also have a Twitter, so they'll likely put it there and perhaps on their mailing list as well. So I can make sure that they link us on their Twitter post so that we can retweet or something like that.
Yeah, and we'll put it on the forum too as well.
Yeah, and we'll do our own standard announcements.
Yeah, and then the website, we have our news site, news area. Yeah.
Maybe while we're still on PyGMT, I can just say that we're still waiting to hear back from SciPy on the tutorial submission. They keep on pushing the date.
Yeah, I saw their website.
The
It was like
tutorials.
end of April, and then now it just say sometime in May.
Now it says,
like that.
hey.
Sometime.
Yeah, I think the dates for that are July 11 and 12. And I will not be in the field for those dates, so that's great. So I'll be around. And then the other update is that the Roses Summer School, so the remote online sessions for emerging seismologists, is happening again. So I'll be teaching a unit again on PyGMT. And this year we got some funding to use implement a Jupyter Hub system through AWS for students to use. So everyone will have a unified environment that we provide to our tech folks with an environment file. So that's going to be really great, and a good test of sort of how to have a consistent computing environment. So we're excited about that.
When is that again? The Roses?
That's running. It's an 11-week long thing. So it's running from the beginning of June through middle of August with a session every week.
June to August. Yeah, I had a friend who apparently the Roses thing is opening up to international.
Yeah, it was open to international folks before, but we're just trying to advertise it better this year. Yeah, we got I think 300 registrants, which does not translate to 300 active participants, of course, but
yeah. Wow.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds exciting. Those of you guys who are going to deal with the tutorial at SciPy, please send me a note. I'll see if I can help pay for your registration or something like that from the GMT grants. Yeah, I don't know if I can, but I think I can, and I think we have the money, so I'd like to push that. So just send me a note on what it is, and I'll try to look at that. Anything else on workshops? Should we? I guess AGU deadline is going to happen sometime in who knows, and it's going to be a half and half meeting. I hear, partly physical, partly online. It's in New Orleans again. I don't know if there are going to be workshops. I haven't heard anything yet, although I haven't paid too much attention to meetings. So I guess we're going to just wait and see on that. If some opportunity comes to open up.
I think it's gone already. So the deadline for that kind of submission is usually along with the session submissions.
Okay, so that was in April.
So I remember reading something about this a while ago and thinking, yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, that's fine. That wasn't our best workshop experience. Any levels. All right, next item is about the GMT FTP and data server. I think the issue there was that, why are we doing FTP in 2021? This is painful. And we've been doing it forever. And I think some of the Linux distributions expect to find the tarball at a certain address. So we kind of have to wean ourselves off it, I guess, and move to an HTTPS, so HTTP link somewhere. And we have the GMT data server that probably could do this for us. Any thoughts about where we should go with this?
So why not on the GitHub release?
What's wrong with FTP?
I think that's also fine. In fact, we do want long-term to somehow get off the computer, having a hardware sitting in the basement in post building, especially when after I relocate to Norway permanently, it's just going to be, trickier. At some point it'll be tricky. I will still be associated with for a long time and have money there and all that stuff, but just won't be there. So it's better to find long-term solution that avoids, one person, bus factory kind of thing, having one person in charge of some computer. That, by the way, is probably pushing 4 years now. At some point that thing has to be replaced anyway. I put in new SSD drives last summer, I think. So it's pretty good, but I don't know how long these racks thing last. Might just stop working one day and then, oh gee, what do we do? Buy another one. So I should push harder on UNAVCO to be a data mirror. They said they would, but they were busy. Maybe this is a good time for me to bring this up with them. It'd be great if they could be the master.
Could pay us for the short course with the server hosting.
That's right. We have a little bit of leverage there.
So on the GitHub releases, we already serve the tarballs through HTTP.
Yeah.
So they are already there.
So maybe there's no point of putting them elsewhere. It's just a question of phasing out the FTP, I guess, on the SOAS server or something.
Yeah, I think that I liked Leo's idea that I think it was Leo who posted on GitHub that we could put the past tarballs on Zenodo. I would prefer to move just to GitHub and Zenodo rather than maintaining 3 different distributions for the releases.
And Zenodo itself, it's probably as long-term as you can get.
Yeah.
With I think they have like a pretty fail-safe server somehow.
So since we have a Zenodo record, I guess, or collection of tarballs, maybe I should dump some of the old stuff there as a archive thing, I guess the last GMT4 version or something like that, the old tarballs, just put that away. And then we'll start cleaning up I guess we can leave the SOAS FTP there for a while, but not add anything to it.
Is there a way to have a redirect? So if someone looks at the FTP URL, have it redirect to one of these on GitHub or Zenodo? I'm not very familiar with FTP, but
yeah.
But if it's too automatic, people won't notice that it changed, and then they'll never stop hitting that redirect.
Yeah.
Right. But we just push it into the future.
Yeah,
probably better
thousands of people who might be relying on that somehow.
So sorry, go ahead.
Do we have any sense of how many downloads are happening from the FTP server versus using a Conda install or getting from GitHub release?
I could probably get those numbers. I do get some data dumped. It's dropped down a lot, I know for sure. So I think, we wouldn't annoy too many people if we just put up a little README or something saying, from now on, this is how it's going to be. And I don't think it's a huge change for people. I expect maybe, some of the Linux distributions will complain that the tarball isn't there anymore, but they'll just have to adjust. I don't think it's a huge issue.
I feel like anyone tech savvy enough to use an FTP can get to the GitHub server.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and it's just adding too much extra work for us to have to worry about maintaining, the stupid FTP server thing. So, okay, that's good. So we'll just use the GitHub. We'll phase out the FTP and put stuff on Zenodo. It's the legacy files. Good. That's like spring cleaning, which is perfect because it's spring. Let's see. Find my agenda again here. Long names for options and modifiers across the GMT ecosystem. That's a good one, right? So the thought there was to have some sort of clearinghouse or data table or something where people who have moved ahead, like Joachim's done a lot of stuff on this for Julia, we would have a record of what the choices were made, so that when the next wrapper comes to that point, they can sort of maybe consider using the same to keep things as similar as they can, even though they can't all be the same. At least they'll be similar. It'll just be easier to find there than to dig through source code. That was the thought. I don't know how easy this is to do. Presumably you can harvest some of the information with a script or two. That's already been done. Thoughts on that?
I have a couple of thoughts. Just to kind of make a summary of where things are right now, PyGMT has a project called Pythonic GMT arguments that is pretty parallel to long option implementation in GMT, which also has a project in the GMT repo. And each of these have several discussions on how to name and implement long options. And so those are difficult to track and also not version controlled in a really systematic way. So one solution that I think could work would be to have a separate repo that just essentially stores a database that could be built from version controlled plain text files or Python scripts or JSON files, really anything, where it would host for each GMT module a list of the different options, and for each option would detail the directives and their long option equivalent, each of the modifiers and their long option equivalent, and also for each option detail which other modules use similar options, which I think would be helpful for wrappers reducing redundancy in code and documentation. And if this is something that people would find interesting, I could try to scrap Joachim's source files for what he has already done. There was a post from 2019 that he dumped all the current ones, but I imagine things may have changed, and we could work from there.
I was thinking that issue. I think, I had some recipe for fishing all the long names that were being used at that time. I think we was in the issue how I did it, because to collect all the names. What changed since then? Well, I added more alias because I repeat. I do not do like in Python. In case of doubt, I'm not sure, and I want that when I'm in doubt typing it, if it is singular or plural, it works both ways. So, I repeat. So I might have added more aliases for each long name, and of course there were some more addings. So it's not up to date. It was some 3 years ago, you said. Yeah. So things have changed a bit since then.
Yeah, I think the difference with Julia and Python is Julia allows you to have like several different long options point to the same.
Yes. For me, it costs nothing.
As for Python, it's a bit harder for us to do that.
Yeah. I don't think it also costs more time, almost nothing. At least nothing we can notice to add more aliases. Just typing them. This is the cost of adding aliases. Is just typing them. But from time to time, I try to understand what you do. I think you would be the same for Python. It's a decision that you follow to have only one. It's not really a technical difficulty, from what I understood.
One thing I want to highlight too, with when Megan's talking about having this shared repository is useful for version control, but I think you could also tackle documentation as well, because one thing we run into a lot with PyGMT users is that they're on the PyGMT documentation and they're trying to color a moment tensor. That was the most recent example. And the flag is totally documented on the GMT page and it's obviously implemented in PyGMT, but it's not, they'd have to go to a separate page. And so basically all they see is the PyGMT documentation, which is a subset of the documented total features. So I think having the documentation also sort of like shared between, PyGMT and GMT would also, and automatically updated would be a huge boon for that as well.
Yeah, we do have an issue around that, like automatically copying GMT docs to PyGMT and
for example. Yeah, that's something I wonder. I don't know the answer. If we put too many, it's not too many, but if we put the documentation which is large in the models, it means all of that text goes to the binary. So it means that the binaries will be a bit big, because documentation, if you count all of that size, is several megabytes, in dozens of megabytes. If you put, that's one thing I hesitate to put more doc strings on the functions, because if we, well, imagine that we had work power to do that, would make huge, I think, I'm not sure of that, but I strongly suspect that would be making very large binaries, because they will be holding the entire documentation inside it. I don't like that idea. But as I said, this is a suspicion of mine that I have never investigated. So yes, so if you could have it separately, and ideally would be that something that could work for both things, that would be even more ideal.
So I agree with having separate repositories to track things that are common, because otherwise we just have repeated things. But one thing that I've been thinking is, like, do we, like, can we conceivably really share long options amongst the command line PyGMT and GMT Julia? Because for some things, like the command line is going to have the frame option, and there's going to be some, like, the modifiers will all have, yeah. But that's the one part that feels very unlike Python from PyGMT, is just specifying a bunch of modifiers in a string instead of having separate arguments or separate functions or whatever. So are we ever going to be able to really share, since using PyGMT is very different, or could be very different from actually using the command line GMT?
Yeah, I think my thought there was, no, they will be different, obviously. But for instance, take a modifier like, let's think of something like an angle or something like plus A40 in some GMT string. Maybe in long option format in GMT command line, that will be plus angle equals 45, let's say. Maybe in Python, you will have a keyword called angle, or maybe it has to be more, I don't know how you nest things in Python, but it will be sort of the same word to the extent it's possible. So at least we'll have some mnemonic value going across the platforms. But the implementations will be different, right? And the styles of the different wrapper languages are different. So it can't be, plus P. It's just not going to happen. But it could be some similarities that made it easier to go back and forth between different wrappers. But the hope was that, and also that it could simplify how the wrappers call the GMT core libraries. If there was a little bit more alignments, I guess, between how the two did things.
Because I feel that with that, kind of the goal that Megan was mentioning of having like a JSON file with all the mappings, I feel like what we're trying to get at is, could we generate all of this automatically and not have to wrap individual modules?
Right.
But at that point, we're kind of sacrificing usability, I think. Because you mentioned like nesting arguments. That's usually something that's not really done. Like I at least I don't know any Python library that has an argument that has like nested arguments inside of it.
Can do a dictionary.
But I think this is so straying towards
that's how I do in Julia.
PyGMT.
When you want to nest it, you create another dictionary. I think your dictionaries in Julia are listed in Python or something.
There are dictionaries, but there aren't many functions that take dictionaries as arguments. When you can pass dictionaries, but they're usually unwrapped. So it's usually kind of flat, like
that goes beyond my knowledge of it. So.
I'm thinking like if
the names of the long, just finished, the names of the variables can be the same from GMT and the wrapper. Nothing stops that. Even if you put a plus before an angle.
Okay, Veggie, you want to say something? So.
Oh no, we actually have like an issue on that, Leo. I just posted it on the docs.
Okay.
And like, so around like using like dictionaries or functions, classes. I'm not sure if you've read that already. But yeah, I think to Megan's point on like the long options, it's more standardizing like the names itself. So imagine like if we say had like a GMT wrapper for R, which doesn't exist yet, but you know, for like a new language, or what are the names we should use, and like the details, like yeah, that's up to the wrappers themselves, whether it's like PyGMT, Julia, or R, or I don't know, any of the upcoming languages. So it's more focus on what we can do to standardize on like a high level, and the details will just be like a discussion for the wrappers themselves.
I think that keeping it to just names is a lot simpler and will make it more likely to be usable. I like the option to have some sort of database rather than strictly text files, or similar to what's in the GitHub discussions, because then you could query them, and we could even host it on a binder or something like that, so that you could just in your browser query what the modifier names are for all the options in basemap, and it could be more searchable and usable than having a repo that you click around to find things, which is more or less similar to what I think we do now.
Yeah, that's true. That's just one other point with the, trying to avoid redundancy of code and things. I'm sure in the GMT core, there's still some options and modifiers that are parsed differently, even though they have the same kind of arguments. So there's duplication of code, slightly variants of the same parsing. There's probably options that needs to be modernized further, or should be made similar to other similar options that just haven't, don't have full control over the thousands of options and modifiers. I'm still finding, that this option over here should have been named something else, right? It's going to be endless. And we do that from time to time and make it backwards compatible. Since we're learning that there are people still running GMT4 scripts without any leading GMT command, and things can break. So we have to make sure things are backwards compatible, at least for the bash version, or the command line version. All right, so should we take some baby steps in that direction of setting up something with these names?
I could start a repo and put one idea for a framework out there, and then we can adjust as needed if people want that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the way I sort of in the C code did for the long options, for the common option, was to have some sort of little structure with all the bits and pieces, so that I can translate a long option command string to the short option command string that GMT parses, instead of having to rewrite all the hundreds of parsers, right? So it automatically translates a long option string into a short option string, and then calls GMT parsing. I don't know if if that concept can be extended beyond C, and if it has any use, I don't know. But that's how I chose to implement it. So the idea there is that every module will have a little structure up front with these long modifier directives and things, and then the code is already there to do the translation. The only problem has to be usage messages and documentations of synopsis and all that stuff have to double. And I guess GNU tools have a lot of examples for us there. We have a mix of long and short options. All right, we're at the end of the agenda. Any other things we should bring up since we're all gathered?
I remember just what kind of announcement. I had opened issues some 2 years ago about having geometries in our datasets. I added that for the header of Julia, and that because now I added more or less the entire, not the entirety because it's very big, but quite a bit of GDAL in Julia, so I can call the GDAL library directly, and I needed the geometries, so I added one more field in our MATLAB GMT datasets that takes care of the geometry, and would be good that we have that in GMT as well, like that old issue. Say,
can you point me to that issue?
Oh, if you are looking, it's for geometries. I think there are two geometries in having geometries in datasets.
Okay.
Is this to parse like the OGR?
Yes, to know if there are points, if there are line strings, if there are polygons, at least the simple ones, and you can have the multi. Well, the multi, I don't have multi. I don't know how the multi for me. I just make several. Multi-line string is several line strings. The multi-polygon is several polygons. That's how I put it in the GMT dataset. I think that's the same thing we would probably do with the least changes it. But we need information in our data structures to hold geometry. That goes also with one of your questions, Luigi, about how to read the OGR. Yeah, because we have to parse that in those data structures, and really is not easy in C.
Okay.
Well, you can do it, but you suffer quite a bit.
Yeah, no, we can do it in Python as well, like within OGR datasets, but it's just like passing that to GMT itself. That's
for the time being, you would have to access to the pointer of the structure and decode the contents of that structure in Python. In fact, that's what I do in Julia. So you ask GMT to read, you receive the pointer to the structure, and then you decode it. Well, I guess you can do that the same, but that's so far
it's just a lot of steps to get there.
So far is what we have to do.
Okay.
But Joachim, you started coding up a GMT OGR read thing in the core that's in a branch.
Yes.
Somewhere. And
no, it's not in the it's in the branch. It's in the code.
It's in the core. Okay. Yeah. I should obviously.
That's what I'm saying. You can ask it to read a file, and you receive a pointer to a structure.
Yeah.
If you have Python can do that as well. We used to have the FFI things to interface with the library. Then you get the pointer, and it's a matter of decoding the contents of the pointer, which is a big. It's not so trivial, but not that difficult as well. So it's already inside the GMT library. The thing is, we don't have any mechanism to convert that in, say, plot X, Y, Z on your command line reading from the memory, because it arrives in the structures that at the time I invented for Miron, that they put you can have a very complicated thing. I think it works pretty well, but it does not cover everything. You can have your OGR file can have several layers. Layers have features. The features have don't know what, that they have geometries. Well, it's a quite complicated model.
Is it possible just to have just the basic pure just points or lines or polygons, not caring about the multi-polygons?
No. It is already it's already implemented. It does all of that. It does all the geometries.
Yeah.
I think it splits when you have the multi things. So I think it will split but it's already in the code. The thing is, for being accessible to the rest of GMT, you need to pass that for the internal data structures.
Yeah.
That's that step that is missing.
Okay.
That step is done. But I mean, well, that was an introduction. That step, it does not have geometries, and we need the geometries.
Yeah, but I can look at that. I mean, the GMT dataset structure does have a flag for geometry. I mean, we do flag, the polygon.
Yeah, but from what I remember, there were two structures that would have half of it. From what I remember, that I think there are two issues about that. But one links to the other.
Yeah.
So you have half of it, and repeated but not complete.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like when we read in the OGR files, right, which is passing a lot of that geometry in. We do parse that, and we do recognize polygons automatically. So we internally in GMT, we should be able to do this for at least those three cases.
At least the points, lines, and strings, and polygons. And I think that's what I'm saying. I think the rest, for the multi version of these, we just repeat. You have more, more fields in the structure.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, I'll make that an item for me to look at.
That would be great.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that'll be great. So we talk about this for years, but it's time to do it. Agree with that. Any other topics? All right, so I'll sort of ask people offline about helping with workshops and what schedules are and what you can and can't do, all that stuff, and then we'll see how many student volunteers you might need to fill in to get a reasonable number of people.
Yep.
And then we'll touch base with the people who will give some sort of overview presentation. I know Joachim is tired of talking about point lines and polygons. So I let you loose on something else,
Yeah, I'd rather talk about something.
So okay, if you want to switch and do if you want to do grids this time, I can do the points.
Yeah, what I said the last meeting is if we could have some introduction to the wrappers, even if it is just a demo.
Yeah,
I think it would be very, very, very useful for if you have so many interested attendees. Would be nice to we can give them a demo of if it is a demo, half an hour is already a lot of things that you can show up, but you can do things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just get us certainly introduced to the wrapper so they will see a few simple things, and then evangelize a little bit about what to do and help out and all that things. It's a captive audience of 200 people, of PhD type people. It's a good opportunity to instill the community and the kumbaya feeling across the world there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point.
Megan, quick question: the Earth Sciences Women's Network workshop, is that just PyGMT or is that GMT and PyGMT?
It will be just PyGMT for this workshop. And I am hopeful that the lessons learned there will help for future GMT workshops, which are definitely still going to happen later on. Probably.
And we are teaching things like Git and stuff.
What's that, Luigi?
We are teaching like basic stuff like Git and Bash. Sorry, just Git in the ESWN Earth Science Women's Network workshop.
Yeah, a lot of it will be transferable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the timing would be for GMT one afterwards, because we have such a busy summer and we want to respect how much time people put into this. So we'll see when subsequent GMT focused one could happen.
And hopefully some of this material can be harvested to be sort of self-teaching modules, that doesn't require people to be there to go over them, short videos or sets of homework kind of thing. So you can teach yourself PyGMT 24 hours, you get this far, have something like that. That would be nice too.
Yeah.
Are we recording the workshops for for future users, Megan?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
So are we recording the workshops, for the ESWM ones, or?
I would imagine we could at least record part of it. Some of it will be breakout rooms that aren't really appropriate to be recorded, but for the portions that we teach, I see that being recordable.
Yeah. Okay. Same as we do for the other one, UNAFCOS. It's a lot of dead time where there's just interaction that doesn't make sense to record.
Of course, with the developer's approval. So if you have objections to that, you can say so.
Yeah, I can't imagine being here and objecting to having your face up here on YouTube.
Well, at least give you 2 seconds to click a button and decide.
Yeah, but so on that topic, Paul, of maybe being able to record this and not have to run the actual in-person workshop. I feel like that's not going to work, because the main value is from having people there, not really just having the material.
Yeah, sure.
So I can't imagine someone watching a 2-hour video about how to contribute to PyGMT on their own time.
No, you're absolutely right. I was thinking a little bit more along the lines of users, I guess, not developer workshops.
Yeah. Then for sure.
Sort of the entry bar to participating in any of these things might be that you should pass this hurdle first. The hurdle might be to take the 24 hours course in whatever, and then you are certified to be to the next step, some sort of climbing ladders in the hierarchy. But yeah, for developers, I agree totally.
I think for your point is definitely valid. I hope that we can get some of these people who will participate in August to lead subsequent workshops, so that still the effort will be kind of diminishing for an improving return.
Some sort of pyramid scheme, you know, that's how you do it.
Yeah. And it works. That's how software carpentry kind of ballooned to the huge thing they are now. They were teaching the workshops and then recruiting people there to help, and then recruiting the helpers to do teacher training, and then recruiting the teachers to do the teacher training.
Yes.
And now, yeah, so like the guy who founded all that, he's not associated with it anymore. Kind of stepped away, retired, walked into the sunset, and the thing kind of just runs itself now.
Put that in the notes. GMT pyramid scheme planning.
I think it's more like Paul is leading a cult.
No clarification whatsoever.
We got to up our game on the swags then to get some more cool stuff to pass out and bribe people with too.
Yeah, so every instructor has to sell 2 T-shirts to the following instructors.
Exactly. There's a small cut on the top.
Yeah. Can we set up like a little shop with like GMT merchandise? Just like T-shirts.
Yeah, we talked about that forever. You know, to have you're gonna make the GMT forever T-shirts for the old guys who don't want to change 5 and 6. But we never got off the ground on that. But that's still, it's a good idea. Something like that. Since we're here, one thing I was going to say. So if everything goes according to plan, and I can spend 6 months in Oxford next spring, that will be a good time to think of a physical GMT summit of some sort in Europe. You know, so any ideas about that, you can let me know. But this is a long time from now, of course, and we don't know, but that's good. And then the following fall, I'll be in Oslo, so not still Europe. Anyway. So on that happy note, should we call it a day and get breakfast, dinner, lunch, or bedtime, whatever that works for people? Great. Well, thanks everybody for coming. This is always fun, and we'll plan the next one at some point and let you know and all that stuff.